without further ado, I am going to introduce the next panel, which is very interesting because I think technologically, the way we have adapted in the last 1 year has been exponential. On a personal level, and I think at an organizational level, we have done things that would have otherwise taken us years to adapt to. In the next panel, we're exactly going to talk about how technology has played a very important role in creating safe environments, especially over the last 1 year that we've had, and how these changes in behavior could possibly be sustained over a long period of time. And it's a very interesting panel that we have here. It gives me great joy to introduce this panel. We have Mr. Rajat Manotra, who is the head of engineering operations Asia Pacific from JLL, and he represents India. And I'm very excited to have him here because he was also going to be a part of our launch edition in Mumbai. Hi, Rajat. Welcome to iRecness Global.
Hi, Harsha.
How are you doing, Rajat?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Great to see you here. Our next panelist is Mr. Hubert Rau, who is the CEO of Rau Germany, and he's joining us from Munich. Hello, Mr. Hubert. So nice to see you today. I think his video is coming on. I will introduce the next panelist. We have Mr. Sameer Kulkarni, who is the Executive Director of Community Management, and he's joining us from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Hello, Mr. Hubert. So nice to see you. And this session will be moderated by Mohammad Kaisar Azad.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Just a moment.
I was just introducing Kaisar, who is the head of MR Community Management, and he's from the UAE. Over to you, Kaisar, and looking forward to a great panel with you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone from Dubai. Thank you, Harsha, for the amazing introduction in this event. I'm so pleased to see participants from all over the world joining us today. So with us, we have Hubert all the way from Germany, Mr. Rajat from India, and Sameer from Saudi Arabia. Very interesting and diverse geographies we have over here today. Well, the topic for today's panel is around how technology is keeping us safe. I mean, the word new normal has been used over and over again, but I don't think there is an end to it. Everything is just so dynamic in today's environment. And the shift in the mindsets of individuals and companies and customers, residents, adapting to technology is something just, it has been unprecedented, and the growth rate has been phenomenal. And I think MC Hammer in the 90s created this song, Can't Touch This. I think it had a deeper meaning, and he saw the future moving ahead. So I think contactless technology has seen a good vibe in the industry, along with other stringent safety measures, which has created a dynamic growth. Now, the questions that we have are quite interesting, and we'll start off with Hubert, because you are the farthest away from me in Germany. And
hi, great to see you. Great to see you. You can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, Hubert, what are the latest technologies available today that are focused on managing buildings and communities? How would you list them out? What are on top of your mind?
I have two items. I will start with the third. First, I think BOTs are one technology which is going to change the way we manage our communities. First, we have to explain what are bots. Bots are software programs that operate on the internet and automate certain tasks. Our firm plan to use these bots. Our aim is that processes like ordering a firm to repair the central heating system is managed directly between our client and the firm without our support. It's crucial with bots that we first implement the rules of this communication in these bots. May I make an example? If the heating system doesn't work properly, our client has first to get in touch with the janitor and not order directly an expensive external service firm. If the janitor can't fix the problem, he can get in touch with the service firm of this OA owners association. We expect a steep rise of our efficiency by these bots, especially outside of our usual working times during night, for example.
Excellent. The same question directed to Rajat as well, around technologies that are available today, and what would be your main focus?
So thanks so much, and I hope I'm loud and clear as well. So great to be on this panel. So thank you to Harsha as well as to you, Kaiser, for bringing me onto this panel. So if I look at current technologies, we should segregate them from point of view of customer interface, right, or human interface. So there are technologies that have got a direct human interface, and you mentioned contactless technology. So when a person walks into the office, if you look at an occupant's sort of life cycle in an occupied environment, then he undergoes various interfaces or points of interaction with the office space or the building. So how do you make all of those interactions touchless, right? And afford him that safe and assured experience. So let's look at those technologies which influence the human interface. The second set of technologies are those which impact the indoor environmental quality, right? So health and well-being, Kaiser has taken a different dimension of importance today, right? And so whatever we can do to impact the indoor environmental quality has a huge influence and impact on not only occupant health and well-being, but also acts as a reassurance, right? So if I have today IoT deployed to measure elements of indoor environmental quality, which will cover air quality, for example, it covers carbon dioxide levels, it covers volatile organic compounds, or it might cover just particulate matter. It could cover noise, temperature, humidity. All of these are documented and proven as per various researches and international, and also the International Well-Being Institutes, that they have a direct impact on human health and well-being. So the technologies which measure all of these parameters and provide them as an outcome to employees plus building operators, those are the technologies which are seeing a greater appetite for adoption today, right? Because everybody's talking about health and well-being. Everybody's talking about reassurance. Employees are coming back to work. How do you reassure an employee that he's coming back to a safe facility? So you reassure him by automating the interfaces that he has with the occupied environment of the building, touchless, right? And like you said, MC Hammer said, you can't touch this. Today, employees need not touch it, actually. So maybe we'll have to sort of re-articulate the lyrics of that song, right? Yeah. Instead of you can touch this, you need not touch this, right? And then when you come inside the facility, you're able to assure the employee that he's coming into a healthy facility, which takes care of his health and well-being as well. And then there are interventions today, and Hubert spoke about bots, and he spoke about robotic interventions. So there are robotic interventions today which have seen an appetite within our customer and client base for cleaning. For example, UV disinfection of facilities, right? Those have seen a greater appetite for absorption into the day-to-day operation of real estate. So there's a lot happening in the tech space, but we can look at that technology subset which directly interacts with the human being, and that technology subset which has a direct impact and influence on the well-being of the occupant.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those insights. And moving to Samir from Saudi Arabia right now, what do you see happening in Saudi Arabia?
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody globally, and Kaiser, of course. Always a pleasure. Saudi Arabia actually is trying to totally reinvent itself. And I think the epitome of that project that they want, which is technology and futurism, is NEOM. So actually, I work on a project just close to NEOM. It's primarily a hospitality project, which will also employ a lot of technology. But here's the catch. We have the world's biggest, largest companies pumping in, pitching to us. But what we're trying to do is to balance technology and cost. So sometimes there is a little bit of an overkill, right, as well. So we're trying to kind of find that right fit, because today technology is a buzzword, and you have guys in from great visionaries from Elon Musk to everybody, and everybody wants to get on the technology bandwagon, so they come and make a pitch, which looks great, but is it functional? Does it serve the purpose? So that's what we're really trying to define. Of course, so you have various technologies today that Kaiser we're trying to look at is, of course, starting with this BIM, right? Your BIM's got to be absolutely great. Then it goes into digital twin. What is digital twin? Most, if people don't know, is Minority Report, where you see the building and the building pops up. You can flip the building around, and then you can zoom into a floor. You can zoom into a particular equipment. So that's digital twin. Or project twin. Then is, of course, you move on to the various different wireless technologies, which is 5G. Now, that's the biggest game changer, because that's going to bring down a lot of connectivity issues and costs. So you can pretty much put a cell tower and you can connect various smaller devices. The frequencies are much higher, and lag times are lower, of course. So that's one that's definitely a game changer. I think 5G, by the way, Huawei is, I think, right now on 8G. They're already trialing 8G. I don't know what it is. So the future has already been defined. So I think that's definitely where we're going towards. But at the same time, a word of caution is there's a lot out there. It's using the MC Hammer analogy, there are a lot of wannabe MC Hammers, but only one guy made it. So I think we've got to stick to that pretty much.
Thank you, Samir. I think the word safe and being safe is just so normal nowadays. You start your greetings with, instead of hello, and you say hope you're doing well, or hope you're safe, and you close your greetings by stay safe. So safety, the paradigm around safety, as opposed to 2 years ago and now, has completely changed, and that has drawn a lot of behavioral changes, the mindset of people. When you look at adopting safety and technology, both hand in hand. So how have you worked around addressing these changes in people behavior and customer mindsets? Hubert?
I think we have one thing to make clear first. Technology not generally increase the cost for the owners. For example, bots cost less for the property manager, but increase his or her efficiency. But of course, there are technologies which increase the cost for the owners associations. Let me talk about operational data monitoring or owners association meetings via internet. That costs a lot of money. The owners have to decide whether it's worth to spend money getting more comfort. COVID, I think, changed the mindset a bit. The owners try to avoid meeting with other owners, and I'm sure are ready for paying for more technology to avoid these personal contacts in future. That's my opinion.
Rajat, if you'd like to add in.
Yeah, I think I agree with Hubert. I think, today when you look at safety or you look at health and well-being, these parameters, Kaiser, cannot be compromised by any business, right? Or a building operator. So any investment which goes into assurance of safety, health, and well-being is investment which is justified. Okay. Now, when you talk of cost of investment, and since we were talking about mindset changes and what's the appetite and adoption of safety-related technology, any cost which is providing assurance around safety and around health and well-being, especially in today's context, as you rightly put, Kaiser, is investment which is not being questioned, right? At the same time, it's not a big investment. So I want to blow this bubble up a bit. If you go back to just the sensor space, 10 years ago, a sensor to basically measure temperature, humidity, for example, these are basic parameters, or indoor air quality or lighting in a facility, were expensive. Today, the sensor costs have come down by almost 70 to 80%. And I'm not joking. Actually, they have come down by 70 to 80%.
That's very true. Very true.
And so what that means is that today the business case around technology adoption has become very, very strong. Today we have global partners where I have a sensor which is a 15-year battery life. And it is like a knockdown kit. I can ship it to a facility manager or a building operator. And all he has to do is use a stick-on tape and stick it in his facility. And if I'm able to give it connectivity through a local Wi-Fi or even through a GPRS connection, then I'm pushing all of this data into the cloud and I'm doing magic with it, right? So if you look at just the cost of technology, it has come down. It's become much more affordable. Plus, the benefit around safety and health and well-being, I think the argument is rested just by these two premises, right? There's safety, health, and well-being, and then there's affordability, right? So we are seeing within our client environment and building operators and investors that there is a definite appetite, that people are not shying away from making those investments because they're seeing a benefit, right? And you look at, we do a weekly analysis of return to work globally through accounts and facilities and buildings that we operate. And we have a huge portfolio across the globe. You'll be surprised that just based on reactive work order volumes, which is there on our technology platform, we're still, especially in Asia Pacific, if you look at countries like India, look at countries like Philippines, countries like Taiwan, Japan, the occupancy levels of buildings is still hovering between 20 to 40%. Now, whereas governments may have lifted the restrictions and said, okay, get more people into the offices, but people are not coming in. And we want people to come into the offices. The offices are not going to go away altogether. We are moving to hybrid working. We have a greater appetite for working from home, but how do you reassure the employee that he's coming into a safe environment? And that reassurance, technology is a huge enabler. And there is a recognition of the fact that this is a huge enabler, which is why it is justifying the investment today more than any time it is done before.
And your thoughts, Samir?
Definitely. I'm not going to argue about one topic. Life is the most precious thing, right? I got 3 kids. The very fact that I held my first kid, that's life, right? So I think preserving life is absolutely one of the most important fundamental human things that we all do by default. So that's I can't agree anymore with Hubert and Rajat. I think as an end user now, coming in as of course the person who adopts these technologies, right? And Kaiser and myself have had some pleasure in doing this over the last several years together. Is absolutely, as what Rajat's saying and Hubert is saying, is technology is an absolute enabler. And I think that's the key word, enabler, right? It has to enable people to do something better, more efficiently and more cost effectively. So typically what we do is you look at a technology, you look at the ROI, the first thing. What is the payback period? Then you look at the technology and the benefit, right? So there's various different methods of doing that and employing that technology. Now, in some cases, it's an absolute I remember actually Kaiser himself, when we were working together, the no touch, we had actually installed in all buildings, about 160 buildings, the no touch buttons to open doors. And this was done about 6 years ago. It made absolute sense, right? So that's the very basic technology that I'm referring to as an end user. It made sense because back then, in our wisdom, we felt, there is technology out there. Each non-touch sensor or button costs about maybe $20, I think it was, with install. It makes absolute sense to go in from a hygiene point of view, safety point of view. And actually, it was more functional because around that area, we had to always go and paint the entire wall because people's smudge marks were always on the wall. So there you go. Your ROI on technology was absolutely a no-brainer, right? So like this, I think, has got to be looked at. But I definitely echo and I agree with Rajat and Hubert in terms of life, most important thing. And around that, we've got to look at what things we can put around that enable a better life. But when I say better, you can't forget money is the most important thing to a better life as well, right? So I think we can't forget that as well.
Thank you, Samir. I think while the shift has been a reduced occupancy in commercial buildings, but on the other side, because nobody is going to work or people are reducing their working hours, the residential occupancy has seen a great rise, where your peak hour is technically 24 hours now because people are home, kids are home. So there's a lot of stress around safety in residential buildings. And that has also changed the tone of technology that is required. One of the things that we see is just throw in a body to go and clean,
Yes.
Right? But how do we alternate that with technology to perhaps upskill the person who's doing the job, or have, like how Hebert and Rajat rightly said, about getting in robots and bots to work on your behalf? So that's, I think, a kind of a conundrum that applies everywhere when you look at residential buildings and owners association, and that's quite imperative to look into as well. Now, having said that, while implementing all these beautiful ideas, there are obvious challenges, especially around the older buildings, older communities which have been constructed 10, 15 years ago with little or no provision for the future, because at that time, all these did not happen. All these did not exist. So what are the challenges that you would face in implementing modern technology in older communities and older buildings? Samir, let's start with you this time.
This is a practical thing that we're living in a lot of our old developments, and as things evolve, I think the first game changer is, as I said before, wireless technology. And I think my panelists are saying the same thing. Wireless technology is an absolute game changer. Further to that is even now 5G, because lags are instantly reduced. So I think that's going to help it a lot. But at the same time, it also means technology is one, but a lot of capital investment is needed in a machine. So for example, AC systems that were built 15, 20 years ago, today they can't cope up with these new technologies. They're not built to integrate well with. You got to install huge VFDs to control energy consumption and motor running and various different things. So there are challenges for sure. And the biggest challenge for me, what I see, is money. Is there enough money to pump in to make such a huge overhaul? Because there are two things. One is in the inside, like I'll use the analogy of us, the inside of our body and the outside of our body. Where do you balance that money spent? So that's the same thing in older buildings, because homeowners want to spend that money on the look and feel, whereas as facility managers and asset managers, you want to focus on the inside more. So finding that right balance financially is also, I think in the older buildings, a very big challenge.
Rajat, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think I couldn't agree with Samir more than how he's articulated the whole problem. If I look at the generation of buildings, let's sort of segment it into Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3. I'm saying Gen 1 is in the 90s, Gen 2 is 2000 to 2010, Gen 3 is post 2010. If you look at the Gen 1 buildings, and Samir is absolutely right, when you look at deep retrofits, they cost money, right? And we've seen a huge change in just the way the engineering of building systems, right? So today, chillers, which are super efficient, high efficient chillers, are available to us, right? Which was not the case in the early 90s. So if you're looking at retrofitting and refurbishing buildings, which are in the range of 25 to 30 years, then there is a capital investment. There's no going away from it. Is that capital investment justified? I think so, yes, because there is typical building life will be 50 years, 50 to 70 years. And there is a capital investment justification, because if the structure is standing, then you have a justification in terms of ROI, right? In buildings, when they operate, they consume energy, and energy is your biggest friend as far as ROI for deep retrofits is concerned. Now, when it comes to technology, and I know Samir is smiling. While it is your biggest friend, it is also the hardest to convince a building owner or an occupant as well around, right? But because energy, the way energy is consumed globally, right? You usually pay for energy after consumption, right? And so therefore the savings are gobbled and digested, and then you say, oh, listen, you saved that much. It's not an easy conversation. But look, we are building operators, and we know the tricks of the trade now. Now we look at Gen 2 buildings, and I'm talking of 2000. These are the buildings which have had IBMS or building management or building automation systems. And hand on heart, and I'll be candid here, I don't know how many of you would agree with me. I would think 60 to 70% of the Gen 2 buildings that we walk into today, the BMSs have been invested in, but they are not delivering to their design intent. The BMS, unfortunately, in commercial buildings or residential buildings, to a limited extent, of course, because you don't have, high funda BMSs in residential buildings. But in commercial, it's the last system to get commissioned, and it's the first to go defunct. Nobody looks at the building automation system. And to keep a building automation system working, you have to constantly recommission it, right? And you have to ensure that it's it's actually controlling the building the way you want it to. Now, if you have a BMS system, then today's technology flexibility, Kaiser, permits us to ride on that BMS system. I don't have to go deep and measure again. If the BMS system is measuring certain parameters, I can pick from the BMS system. So today, technologies have open protocol systems where I can pick from any protocol of a BMS. It could be a Siemens, Schneider, Honeywell, and I can push it into the cloud and do magic with that data, right? I can also go deeper. I can install sensors as well. So in the Gen 2 buildings, it's a bit of a mix and match. You ride on an existing BMS, you'll have to recommission the BMS. So there's an investment there, no going away from that. You ride upon it. And then in case there's a deeper sensor measurement required, then you go and install those sensors. In the Gen 3 buildings, I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but you poked the ribs of a building operator, so you have to tolerate me now. Okay, but when you look at Gen 3 buildings, these are the buildings which are, I think, which have got fairly good building automation systems. And so the retrofit of bringing in modern tech, modern sensors, coming up with modern BI and analytics is not so difficult. We can still do it, right? And there's a business case around it. So hopefully that answers it. You look at the really old buildings, yes, there's an investment, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of ROI. And I think the efficiency of systems, Kaiser, has improved significantly over the past 30 years, right? So, I recall in buildings of the early 90s, you never got, a IQW, for example, of, less than 1. Today, you talk of IQWs for chiller systems of in the region of 0.6 to 0.7, right? And sometimes even below that. So I'm saying there is a business case when you retrofit the older buildings.
Thank you for your insight, Rajat. Now we'll ask Hubert to put in his thoughts, because that's I think is a good expertise coming in from Hubert on these lines.
Thank you very much, Kaiser. Germans always think about money. They know to count. So I agree with Rajat and Samir that it's about money. If you manage an expensive old building, the owners expect a high level of operational data monitoring. These owners expect a high availability rate of all technical devices in their building. But in middle or lower level old buildings, the owners are not ready to pay for a high availability. These owners accept yet that you sometimes have no warm water for, let's say, 2 hours. Let's talk about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, of course, makes this technology more affordable, especially in older buildings. There's no doubt. So I expect that, for example, operational data monitoring will creep into middle-level buildings in the next couple of years. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Sticking to you, Hubert, just one more question that we will, not one more question, but a question that has been posed is, now with technology and especially around safety and precaution, there's a lot of risk management. that you need to do with when somebody is entering or exiting the building, the people who are working in the building, like your service providers and contractors, including your residents themselves. So Hubert, what kind of technology and would apply in this sense to manage these risks, and how do you deliver them?
Okay, Kaiser, I see this question, of course, in accordance with connection with COVID. In Germany, we have quite different situation. Every resident is responsible for his own safety. COVID safety is generally not a problem of the community and therefore not a problem of the community managers. But this is applicable only to the commonly used areas of our managed buildings. As managers, we become responsible when we go into the apartments itself. Let me show you an example. At the moment, in one large building, we have to remove some flooring, including the screed, because there are problems with sound transmission from one unit to its neighbor units. To have this work done, we had to develop a special hygiene concept, of course, with a time schedule to make sure that at any time no more than 2 people are in the apartment. Every worker has to type in his beginning and ending time every day in an app on his cellular. So the manager of these works can always check in the software how many people were at work and who got in touch with whom in case there is a COVID alert. Technology allows us in this case to have this repair job in these units done despite COVID.
All right, thank you. Rajat, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think when you look at safety of buildings, we have an application as well. It's called Work Permit. And what we are doing now is we are trialing AR and VR systems as well. So the Work Permit system is an application on a contractor's phone. When he comes in to perform work in a particular facility or a building, he undergoes an induction. He registers himself prior. He creates a work method statement and does a risk assessment, creates a safe work method statement. It's submitted and it goes via the approval protocol built into the technology itself. It's our own application. We've developed it over the last 5 years because we have a lot of high risk work which goes on our facilities, right? It could be high voltage work, working in confined spaces, working at heights. And so we extended that also to this current situation. So I know exactly what time a contractor who has entered the building, what time he has left. Now, if he's performing a high risk activity, for example, if I'm getting reactive cleaning done, right? If there is a confirmed case and I'm getting that cleaning of a facility done and I need to monitor it remotely, we're also trialing AR and VR equipment, whether it is RealWear or HoloLens. So we are doing that as we speak. So while we have this application, which is a mobile phone application, it has got an inbuilt workflow and it's got an inbuilt approval process. So unless he's not approved by an authorizing person, he cannot go in and perform that work. And when he does perform that work, then we are trialing systems to actually monitor him real time as well while he's doing that work, right? So it's interesting how this space is also evolving, but we've come up with our own solution here. Yeah.
Samir?
Mine is in the context primarily in the Middle East. Things are a little different here. So actually I have a great example to show where Saudi Arabia, I must say, is phenomenally doing a great job. Just about recently, the government of Saudi Arabia has pretty much launched this app. Everybody has to have this. Now, what it does is, of course, besides contact tracing and so many other different things, is it validates contact between people, infection, and so on, right? And I'm referring mainly to commercial and residential now. So that's one. So I think the governments will begin to have a big play in this part in building safety. There will be some regulations over time. Then it comes down to the individual building itself. I think, as Rajat rightly said, is technology will come in, which is already there today. So infrared cameras and AI will start detecting temperature of people and start reading. So earlier we were just reading people movement through CCTV cameras. And now we'll move on. It'll become standard to have even temperature as well. So that's on one side. Of course, and then you have in terms of overall risk when it comes down to people, contractors moving around, it's always twofold. And definitely technology, software, and as I said, in newer buildings, in generation 3 buildings, as Rajat touched, is digital twins or project twins will be a big enabler in that risk mitigation, because you can simulate a lot on that and then pretty much mitigate that. So I think that's where we are heading. Smaller buildings is a little bit of, as Hubert said, it's everybody's responsibility, I think, collectively. So definitely.
I think digital twin is one of my pet projects right now that we're executing, but it's a very interesting thing. We'll move, thank you so much for answering my questions, but now I have quite a few questions from the audience. So the first question is around, which we partially discussed, about how do you sell the concept of technology to homeowners and the occupants? What would be the selling trick? And I will ask this question to Rajat right now. So if you can just brief that up for us very quickly.
It's a very interesting question. Yeah, I think let me first target the most challenging part of this question. How do I sell technology to a homeowner, right? And I think the first sell here is around safety, security, health, and well-being. And that's not a difficult conversation, right? If you're able to articulate the benefit and the outcome for the homeowner, that by investing in these systems, he's able to assure himself of safety, security, health, and well-being, then he will do it. I'll give you a very interesting example, and you'll have to pardon me that this is an in the Indian context. I was actually in a retail store the other day, and sometime back pre-COVID, and there was obviously a lady of very modest means who was out to buy a refrigerator, right? And so she was questioning the salesman on the stars that she was seeing on the refrigerator, right? There were 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. And the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in India, for all consumer goods, has actually star rated the energy efficiency of these consumer goods. So 5-star refrigerator would obviously cost about maybe 10% more than a 2-star or a 3-star. But the salesperson said to this lady, she said, but what do these stars mean? So he said, your electricity bill will be lesser than it is with the other refrigerator. And I can tell you that sales conversation did not last more than 5 to 7 minutes. She was willing to spend that extra 10%, 7 or 10%, to buy a 5-star rated refrigerator, right? So it's about contextualizing the benefit to a personal benefit for a homeowner. I think that's very, very important. And as engineers, we need to learn that trick, right? Because what we do has a direct impact on the homeowner's health, well-being, safety, and security. I think that is the trick to sell technology to a homeowner. To a building occupier is easier, but I think I'll let this be answered by the others as well.
Now, I think rightly said. I think the return on investment and the benefits around that, the ancillary benefits around that, play a very critical role in selling those options. Because from a building perspective, or from a community owners association perspective, when you're getting to invest in such a technology, I think the homework around what is the ROI, how long is the ROI, what are the ongoing or continuous benefit of having such technology in place plays an important role. And I couldn't agree with you more on that, Rajat. Thank you. All right. So our next question to Hubert. Now, with all the technology that we are putting in, it could be primarily on cloud or on our networks, the risk of cyber attacks are also increasing. So the security around Internet of Things, the security around data is high on everyone's agenda. How do we tackle this, and how do we educate our customers and our residents that it is safe?
That's a really good question. Maybe you know that in the EU, European Community, we got a new law, I think 2 years ago. And this law requests that all companies have to reach a certain level of security with their data. For example, all the data have to be stored in the EU, not outside the EU, for example, in the United States. And the sensibility here in our country, in Germany, is very high in this respect. And also the punishment is really high. You have to pay a high fee when you get caught if you don't work in accordance with this law. So yes, we have a really strong law here, and we have to follow this law. And so we can make sure that all the data are safe in our country, and there's no access from people who shouldn't get access to our data.
Excellent. I think I'm a lot into machine learning and artificial intelligence, and there is in IT there is a term called ethical hacking and penetration tests. So when it's a good mechanism to periodically do these penetration tests and ethical hacking tests to understand the strength of your and safety of your system, of your technology, to make sure that external threats are reduced and the risks are mitigated, making sure you have proper backups, making sure you have backups spread across different areas, not all in the same location. These all tips and tricks always help. Next question to Samir. Now, not everybody is comfortable with technology, especially my dad. He started using a smartphone maybe 5 years ago, but now he's glued onto it. But how do we, educate our older customers, our elderlies, on using technology, and how can we give them that comfort factor?
I think the first thing is in anything that you do, right? You've got to look at that demographic, and you're spot on. Is you've got the younger, millennials, then your baby boomers. And then you have your older folk. And I think what it is giving them also the option, because a lot of people are not always comfortable with that. And we have to consider, as Hubert correctly said, and even Rajat also touched on it, is that end user experience. We have to be conscious that older people may not always adopt technology. So we have to have that alternative for them, perhaps a simpler version, maybe. So that's one. The second thing is, of course, where do you hit the sweet spot? Simplicity is, I guess, the best, is the sweetest spot. But of course, I think as time goes, more and more, older generations are beginning to adopt technology as well, as long as it is functional, right? And it provides a daily requirement or need. For example, WhatsApp. Older people, I think, on WhatsApp more than the young people, because all they're doing is forwarding all day, right? So that's something that they've adopted. It's like cool for them, right? So I think it's finding that sweet spot. It's a very tough question to answer, but for everything, you've got to find that right mix. I think that's important.
Excellent. Now, a last question to all of the panelists over here. The consumer behavior, we already seen shift in consumer behavior and customer behavior on using a lot of apps for deliveries. Instead of going to shop physically, they would, you'd use your app and have that. So we've seen a surge in that. What do you think just keeping that in mind and the change in consumer behavior, what are the long-term implications if we have to look at this overall implementation of technology to create safe and healthy communities? Hubert, we'll start with you. Hubert, you are on mute. We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
I pushed the wrong button. I think COVID changed a lot. COVID showed the owner that, for example, OA meetings face-to-face are no longer necessary. The use of apps got entrance in everyone's life. COVID erased the mistrust against apps. I'm sure the OA managers' world after COVID will be completely different from that before this pandemic. And let me cite Timothy Ferriss from his famous book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And I will talk about technology. Timothy said that what you most fear doing is what you most have to do. I think a lot of people now understand that they have to start with technology. Thank you.
Samir, your final thoughts?
I think definitely, and I think Kaiser, you yourself said that, and I can't agree with you more. I think the importance of work and commercial buildings will start dropping, and a focus will start coming in more on residential. And people will be multitasking more while they're working from home or they're looking after their families. And I think life's going to change forever. And as part of that, I think this on-demand services will actually come in a lot. It will be, it's the very on-demand is today. You sit on your, perhaps some people do it on your toilet seat and you start ordering stuff from Amazon. Could you imagine you're sitting in the toilet and buying things? Let's be honest, we're doing it, right? Reality.
True.
So things are changing, and that's only just one. So online consumer behavior is definitely has changed. It's going to further keep getting amplified. The biggest one was, I think, Amazon, and the second one in day-to-day was Uber. They really disrupted this whole consumer behavior that we had on demand, and it's just going to get more and more and more, from food to services. It's just going to keep increasing.
Don't forget Netflix.
Yes.
Rajat, your thoughts on this?
Oh, I think I agree both with Hubert and Samir. If you look at just the statistics, today we have more than 650 million smartphone users, and the data consumption during COVID, and it's not only because of Netflix and video streaming, it's also because of all of what Samir has said. You're actually now ordering consumables, everything on applications, right? So the online presence of an average consumer has gone up significantly by up to 30 to 40%, right, on these applications. And so data consumption in the last 12 months amongst the 650 smartphone users has gone up by 25 to 27%, right? Which is why we are seeing such a huge surge in data center industry, because data consumption is going up. Why is it going up? Because of what you just said, isn't it? We are moving to a hybrid form of working. We are coming back to homes. We are working from home. We have the requirement to, like what we are doing today, right? We are meeting virtually. We have a requirement now. There are the pros and cons to it. Don't get me started on the cons. I'm not such a great fan of virtual working. It can be very stressful, but especially when you're managing multiple time zones, as most of you are. But I think the whole data consumption has gone up. Online presence of consumers has gone up. Data consumption just for normal office work has gone up significantly. So yeah, I mean, we are seeing a trend here, right? That trend is translating on the supply side to data centers as well, isn't it? We haven't seen that big growth on colo edge data centers as we've seen in the past 12 months. And this is across the globe.
Excellent. Thank you so much, panelists, for your time today. I'd like to invite Harsha back in to say a few words and final closeouts.
Hi, so thank you so much. That was an incredible panel discussion, and the Q&A box was just kind of bursting with questions. So I hope all the panelists had a great time today.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Great. Thank you so much for providing. Thank you for providing these insights. And I would again like to make a very important announcement that while we are amidst our IRECMIS Global Edition, we have announced that we will be coming to Dubai on 9th of December 2021 with an actual physical event, hopefully, if everything goes well. And it would be great, like always, to have the support and the encouragement that all of you have shown to IRECMIS Global. So thank you so much for joining us today. And please keep contributing to the community of community management. Thank you so much.